It's 5 o'clock p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. We start this newscast with a special briefing from the South Korean health authorities. That should last for around 10 minutes. New measures taking effect today at level 4, social distancing in the greater Seoul area. Major restrictions on the operating times of businesses, as well as limits on the sizes of gatherings that can be held. No more than 2 people can meet together privately after the hour of 6 p.m. So in the briefing this afternoon, they'll likely be covering those measures, as well as other developments on the coronavirus, including the latest case numbers, as well as other measures that will be taken in response. Today, there were more than 1,000 new cases of COVID-19 for a third day in a row. The exact figure, 1,100 new cases, 1,063 of which were local and 37 imported. And we'll go to the site of the briefing as soon as it begins. Again, this is at the Korea Center for the Korean health authorities. There was also 1 new death from the coronavirus today as well. In total, South Korea has had 169,000 cases of COVID-19 so far, and the new cases are coming out throughout the country, but primarily concentrated in the Seoul area. Around 80% of them have been in that region. And we're waiting for the health authorities, if you're just tuning in, to begin a special briefing this afternoon, scheduled at 5 p.m. It looks like they are getting ready. The press are there at the center, and officials are entering now. Let's go to the site and listen in.
We also have a sign language translation available for you as well. First of all, we have Commissioner Jung Eun-kyung with the latest on the COVID-19 response measures in the metropolitan area. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Commissioner Jung Eun-kyung of the KDCA. Here are some updates on our forecast of the COVID-19 outbreak in the metropolitan area. For the 6 straight days, we have seen our daily tally exceed the 1,000 mark. And in the metropolitan area, for the past 1 week, we have seen 799 new average domestic cases for the past week, which is about 80% of the total infections. And looking at the sources of infection in the metropolitan area, we see that about 50.7% of them are contact with previously confirmed cases. And we also have many people, about 34.9%, which are under investigation. And lately, stemming from the nightlife entertainment venues as well as other clusters, we are continuing to see increase of the cluster infections. And comparing the latest infections with the third major outbreak, we have seen that we have a higher proportion of those patients in the young adults and middle-aged people. On the other hand, we are also seeing a decrease, about 10% of the cases stemming from senior citizens above the age of 60 who have already been vaccinated. We also have seen continued infections, however, and we also have seen about 25% of our total infections being under investigation. However, this has been on a significant rise lately, and we see that there are many silent spreaders within our community. And the Delta variant, which is known to be more transmissible than the original strain, we have seen that this has significantly increased from about 2.5% range to over 26%. And as for our future forecast, we see that after the third wave, we have seen many cumulative silent spreaders within the local community, and we also see the possible risks of infection going forward. And our modeling shows that if our situation continues, and also taking into consideration that our infection rate stands at about 1.22, our daily cases could rise up to about 2,300 by mid-August. However, on the other hand, if we continue to contain the spread of the virus in the metropolitan area in particular, with the 2 weeks of intensified social distancing measures, we hope to see that our daily tally could drop to about 600 range in the mid-August. And the quarantine authorities will continue to roll out vaccines speedily, and we will also carry out testing, tracing, and treatment. And we will also make sure that our fourth wave is controlled as soon as possible. Thank you very much. And next we have Mr. Gov'T, Minister of Health and Welfare, who will be updating us on the response measures.
존경하는 국민 여러분,
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Minister of Health and Welfare. In the metropolitan area, we have discussed some quarantine measures and the medical response measures, and here are some details. And the fourth wave that we are witnessing right now is also seeing a decrease in the fatality rate. However, we believe that there is also high infectious rates stemming from many silent spreaders within the community. And to this end, the quarantine authorities aim to bolster our capacity to test in the metropolitan area and also conduct epidemiological investigations. And to this end, we have also mobilized 250 personnel from the police, military, and other sectors to also intensify the capacity of epidemiological investigation in the capital area. Moreover, in the capital area, we will also make sure that we have more people who will be serving in the screening centers as well as live treatment centers, and they are on top of the 880 people which have already been mobilized and deployed. And we will make sure that we decrease the work burden that are already mounting on the many of the people who are working on the front lines to combat the COVID-19 response. And I take the opportunity to extend my deepest gratitude to all of them. And in order to respond and prepare for a rapid surge in the number of cases in the metropolitan area, we will also make sure that we prepare for the medical treatment centers, especially the medical hospitals at the beds at the hospitals. And moreover, we are seeing a stagnant rise in the number of critically ill patients. However, we see an increase of asymptomatic patients or those with mild symptoms. And to this end, we will also open more live treatment centers, and we already have also added 1,000 new hospital beds for the live treatment centers, and we will also make sure that we have more of 4 live treatment centers going forward, which will be open in the later month, which will supply about 5,000 hospital beds for those with mild and moderate symptoms. And we will also make sure that we mobilize about 800 more hospital beds for those with other types of symptoms who will be administered at the hospitals for COVID-19 designated hospitals. And we are making sure to supply more hospital beds going forward. And we have 0 patients who are waiting to be administered to the hospital. And we will also make sure that we exert our full efforts to supply more hospital beds going forward. And we are also, this is the first day of the capital area being placed under the level 4 social distancing measures, and it is very unfortunate that we have to place the capital area under such tough and strict restrictions. And we aim to also carry out a very short and bold measures for the next 2 days, 2 weeks that is, and we also significantly want to hope that we can contain the virus going forward. We ask you for your continued participation and cooperation. Even at this moment, there are many people who are getting tested even at this very moment as we speak right now across the country, and thanks to the many efforts put forth by the medical professionals and volunteers, we are able to contain the virus to a large extent. And this week is the first week of the level 4 distancing in the metropolitan area, but we believe that the previous weekend was also when many people also exerted their full efforts to participate in such intensified measures. We ask for your continued continued understanding and consideration and refrain from having private gatherings. And if you have any clinical symptoms of COVID-19, please get tested as soon as possible. The government will also work with the public, and we will also make sure that we can overcome the fourth major wave. We ask for your continued participation once again. Thank you very much. And next, we have Minister of the Interior and Safety, Mr. Chun Hae-chul, who will be briefing us on the support measures. I am Minister of the Interior and Safety. Today we have had our meeting on the special quarantine measures in the metropolitan area, and we are seeing continued outbreak in the capital area. And to this end, we believe that it is very important to swiftly test our new patients and also carry out tracing as soon as possible. And in the metropolitan area, all of the local authorities have already complied with the intensified quarantine measures, and they have set up more live treatment centers and also walk-in and makeshift testing centers. And we ask for your continued cooperation going forward, and the central government will also make sure that we spare no efforts and in support in also providing the support for the epidemiological testing and also tracing. And in the metropolitan area, we also will provide a pan-government quarantine task force, and we also have about 590 people who are mobilized, and we will be also carrying out intensified inspection at about 7 major categories of high-risk facilities, including cram schools and other public centers and also multi-use centers. And to this end, the Health Ministry will also carry out continued cooperation in cracking down and continue the crackdowns on the high-risk facilities. And we will also make sure that these quarantine measures are met at the ground. And we will also have a zero-tolerance principle as well. As for those facilities that violate and breach these quarantine measures for even once, we will make sure that they are faced with a closure of the business for temporarily, and we will also make sure that they have faced penalties and fines as well. And we will also be bringing you the details of such factors in our daily briefing. And we also want to highlight the importance of the public's participation in the quarantine measures that are implemented by the government. Despite the inconveniences, we ask for your continued cooperation. The central government will continue to cooperate with the cities of Incheon, Seoul, and the Gyeonggi-do province. And as part of such effort, we will also make sure that we bolster our testing capacity. And to this end, the testing centers, especially the makeshift testing centers, the 97 of them are currently established. However, we will also set up more than 30 additional ones going forward at crowded places so that we can increase the testing capacity by about 30%. And the Ministry of Interior and Safety will make sure that these centers are set up as soon as possible. One of the largest challenges to fighting the COVID-19 on the ground is about securing the necessary workforce. To this end, we will also make sure that we will also bring in the more public servants who will be employed going forward, and we will make sure that they are employed earlier than scheduled, and we will make sure that about 250 officials will be mobilized as soon as possible in needed areas. And we will also spare no efforts and support for the metropolitan area and the local governments, and we will distribute 340,000 more vaccine doses to the capital area, including Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi-do province. And we will also make sure that we carry out continued COVID-19 vaccinations. And in also mid-August, we will make sure that the local government and authorities have their own discretion to carry out the vaccination plans. And within the month of July, we will make sure that we establish 50 15 more vaccination centers nationwide so that we have a total of 285 vaccination centers nationwide. We will exert our full efforts until the situation is stabilized. We ask for your credibility and also participation in the quarantine measures, especially in the metropolitan area. Thank you very much.
예, 다음으로 각 부시장의 수도권 자체
And that's where we'll leave this afternoon's briefing. Government ministers updating the country on the fourth wave of the pandemic here in South Korea and the special measures being taken to stop it. And President Moon Jae-in today said he is sorry that the Seoul area has had to implement tougher restrictions, saying it's an emergency remedy aimed at getting the situation under control quickly. He chaired a special session on Monday to review the COVID-19 situation in Seoul and the surrounding areas amid the recent spike in new infections.
봉쇄 없이 할 수 있는 가장 고강도의 조치로서 방역에 대한 긴장을 최고로 높여 짧고 굵게 상황을 조기에 타개하기 위한 것입니다. 또다시 국민들께 조금 더 참고 견뎌내자고 당부드리게 되어 대단히 송구한 마음 금할 수 없습니다.
Monday's meeting was attended by the mayors of Seoul and Incheon and the governor of Gyeonggi-do province. President Moon stressed the need for cooperation between the central and local governments to make sure the new restrictions are implemented. Moon said the government will deploy all possible resources for testing and thorough tracing. He also pledged to speed up the vaccination campaign, saying that it will help stop the spread and make COVID-19 a less dangerous disease. Starting Tuesday, those in the Seoul area whose work requires frequent contact with people, like bus and taxi drivers, will be eligible to get the vaccines South Korea got from Israel in a swap agreement. And the level 4 restrictions will be in place at least for the next 2 weeks. They include a ban on gatherings of more than 2 people after 6 p.m., and there are special rules for gyms. As before, in Seoul, restaurants and cafes have to close by 10, and bars are closed altogether. Lee Kyung-eun has the details.
The first day of the new Level 4 distancing measures in the capital region. With the country's toughest COVID restrictions in place, companies are advised to have at least 30% of their workforce working from home. Throughout the day until 6 p.m., no more than 4 people allowed to meet. The rule applies even to family members unless they actually live together. But there are exceptions for a babysitter or a family member taking care of a child. Religious activities go virtual and big events or rallies are banned except for one-person protests. At indoor gyms, when doing group exercises like spinning, the music should be kept at between 100 and 120 beats per minute. So the BTS song Butter is allowed, but size Gangnam Style is not. And the speed of treadmills must be kept under 6 kilometers per hour. This is to prevent the spread of droplets during intense workouts. Starting 6 p.m., private gatherings are limited to a maximum of just 2 people. So if there are 4 people in a cafe after 6 p.m., at least 2 of them must leave. The 2-person rule lasts until 5 a.m. the next morning. Late-night entertainment businesses like clubs and bars are also closed, and all other businesses like restaurants and cafes must close by 10 p.m. These measures will last for 2 weeks. According to a recent survey by Realmeter, 70% of people believe that the government did a good thing by imposing these measures. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
And starting Thursday, even South Korean citizens won't be able to enter the country unless they can produce a negative COVID-19 test. Sources in the airline industry say the government has submitted official notices to airlines that they should not let people board without one. Since February, South Korean nationals who didn't have proof were able to enter as long as they agreed to be quarantined for 2 weeks at designated facilities. Globally, the official number of coronavirus cases is now at 188 million, and officially there have been 4 million related deaths. Now the world's leader so far in COVID-19 vaccinations, Israel says it's looking at giving booster shots of the Pfizer vaccine to the general public to protect against the Delta variant. Israel's health ministry said it'll first seek approval to give boosters to hospital patients who've undergone organ transplants or have weak immune systems. Also, because the Pfizer vaccine has a lower than expected efficacy against the Delta variant, it's also considering giving a booster shot to vaccinated people in general. Pfizer has applied for approval for emergency use of booster shots in the U.S. and Europe. A month ago, Israel had fewer than 10 COVID-19 cases a day, but now it's up to around 450. Heavy downpours in China's Sichuan province since last Friday have reportedly forced more than 100,000 people to evacuate their homes, and more rain is on the way. Rain and flooding have caused multiple landslides and have submerged homes and shops. Local authorities estimate that 110,000 people have been relocated from their homes. And there's been heavy rain in Beijing, too, the heaviest so far this year. Nearly 1,000 flights have been canceled in the capital city, while some roads in and around the city have been closed. Companies in South Korea had been bringing their employees back into the office just a week or two ago, but with the rise in infections, they're asking them to work from home again. The guideline is to have at least 30% of employees work from home. Min Soo-kyun has this report.
In light of the vaccine rollout, companies in South Korea were reviewing plans to bring more workers back into their offices. But with the recent spike in COVID-19 cases, especially from the fast-spreading Delta variant, plans have now changed. Firms are expanding remote working hours for employees and banning in-person business meetings. Starting today, 30% of the workforce at Samsung Electronics are working from home, and business trips, face-to-face meetings, and employee training programs have been put on hold. LG Electronics is taking similar steps with 50% of its staff working from home from last Thursday. The company had initially planned to relax its work-from-home capacity to 20% this month. Some businesses have taken the leap to go fully remote. SK Group's holding companies, SK Incorporated and SK Innovation, are requiring all but a few essential employees to work from home.
As the number of daily confirmed cases exceeds 1,000, the company has decided to implement a work-from-home system for all employees, except for cases where it is necessary to work at the office.
Manufacturers, including those in the automobile and shipping industries, are concerned that a reduction in office activity could disrupt production at a time when they're already facing supply shortages.
The auto industry is in a very difficult position as chip shortages have not been fully eased, and there's the looming possibility of a labor union strike.
Service sector businesses such as restaurants and airline services also share concerns as they fear that their businesses will be hampered further under the Level 4 social distancing measures. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports performed strongly in the first 10 days of July, led by increased shipments of petroleum products and auto parts. According to preliminary data from the Korea Customs Service, exports from July 1st to the 10th amounted to more than $15 billion. This is a 14.1% jump on year. Exports of petroleum products were up by more than 50%, auto parts by more than 45%. Taking into account that there were fewer working days, daily average exports rose 21.2% on year. The number of people in South Korea paying for employment insurance, meaning they have a job, soared last month in a sign of the labor market recovering. According to the Labor Ministry, there were more than 14 million subscribers to the state insurance program in June. This is an increase of 462,000 people compared to a year earlier and is the biggest on-year increase in 19 months. Employment insurance is required in most jobs in Korea. The ministry said the increase in hiring was mainly due to strong growth in exports and consumption and because the number was so low 12 months earlier. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, good afternoon. Thank you for coming on today.
Happy to be here.
Well, of course, the greater Seoul area is now under level 4 social distancing for the next 2 weeks because of the rise in coronavirus cases. Without a doubt, this is going to cause a lot of pain for small business owners. What do you make of the situation, Professor, as it relates to people's livelihoods or the larger economy?
Okay, well, bad news first. Last times that we had lockdowns, second quarter last year, fourth quarter last year, we had a negative growth in consumption, minus 6% for the second quarter, minus 1.2% for the fourth quarter. So there will be pain, but I don't think it'll be as bad as the fourth quarter last year because this is not a complete lockdown or a shutdown. Most businesses and factories will continue to operate, and hopefully we can end this in 2 weeks. So it might be extended more, but still, we hope that it'll end in 2 weeks. Now, as we saw before, most of the hit will be taken by certain industries which deal with personal activities, dining, tourism, retail, shopping. Damage will be limited to those industries. Damage will also be limited to Seoul, Incheon, Gyeonggi metropolitan area, which is one of the reasons why I do not expect the damage to be as high as it was the fourth quarter last year. Now, if distancing lasts only for 2 weeks, and we hope that it will be, then I still think that the growth rate above 4.0% for the year is certainly possible. But if it is not contained within those 2 weeks, then it's going to be obviously a much more serious problem. One of the big mysteries, one of the big factors that will affect this result is the recently passed law where shops which are affected by distancing measures will be compensated, but the amount of compensation and the conditions for compensation have not been set. It has to be set by a committee which has not been even formed yet. Now, if the the small shops in the affected industries have been disappointed that they have not been getting enough aid or enough assistance from the government in the past when they were affected by distancing. So if they do not cooperate with the current distancing measures, then obviously the distancing can go much further than 2 weeks, and the effect can spread beyond the Seoul metropolitan area. So I hope that they will take this into account and reinforce the budget and widen and deepen the amount of compensation that these affected firms will get.
As a way of encouraging compliance, interesting idea, Professor. Thank you for that. And last week we saw a big drop in stocks turning to the market on Wall Street, but they bounced right back to new highs, which is where we stand now. Futures a little lower right now, but what's the story in the global markets?
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. As you said, there was a large sell-off on Thursday, and when you talked with analysts, when you read the analysis that was on Thursday evening, they mentioned factors like return of the fear of inflation, fear of growth slowing down, not stopping, but it'll still be a healthy growth. It's just not as high as people previously expected, and return of the coronavirus in the Delta form. So we had Treasury yields falling to the lowest levels of the year last year, and as you said, a very large sell-off on Thursday. But then right the day after, on Friday, the U.S. markets gained it all back, and in fact, it went even higher. All three main indices had record or near record closes on Friday, and they closed the week above the closing of the last week. So Dow rose 0.2% for the week, and S&P and NASDAQ rose 0.4% for the week. And in many cases, stocks which led the losses on Thursday just gained it back on Friday. Bank of America, American Airlines, United Airlines. So it seems like people are very nervous, and a lot of excess liquidity that we see in the global market is affecting the stock markets in a very volatile way, so that even slight differences of opinion can lead to large changes in the stock market. European markets, it basically followed New York. It lost on Thursday. It bounced back on Friday. But unlike U.S., not all of them regained above the Thursday loss levels. DAX and CAC recovered very close to where they were closed on Wednesday. FTSE closing on Friday was lower than closing on Thursday. Asia, the New York gains are showing up today. Nikkei was down last week, but it went up 2.25% today. And Shanghai was down on Thursday and Friday, but it was up today. Hang Seng, there was a large fall last week from Monday to Thursday, but then slow upward recovery since then.
And here in Korea last week, the rise in coronavirus cases put a dent in stocks, but today shares were up by a fair amount as investors apparently digested that news about distancing. Those gains led by banks and other financials. Tell us about the domestic market.
Okay, well, Kospi, after a historical high last Monday, it declined all last week. Then, as you mentioned, it rose today. It rose 0.89% today and closed at 3,246.47. Institutions bought. Foreigners also bought on net, but very slightly, only 38.2 billion won. Individuals sold. Sell-off last week was attributed to foreigners, especially Samsung Electronics. Foreigners sold Samsung Electronics despite their announcement on the 7th that they had higher than expected second quarter earnings. So analysts are attributing this foreign sell-off to worries about tapering by the Fed, and for Samsung in particular, expectations that semiconductor market has peaked, though a lot of domestic analysts and industry analysts differ on whether the market has actually peaked for semiconductors. Kosdaq, it declined since Wednesday, but it broke its losing streak today. It was up 0.55%, and it ended today at 1,034.64.
Well, this week, Professor, we'll be getting a report from the Bank of Korea that'll tell us about how much money's out there circulating in the economy and with the easy money policy that's been in place for so long now. Also, a report on jobs from Statistics Korea. What else is on your radar this week, Professor?
Okay, well, the big gorilla in the room is the BOK Monetary Policy Committee meeting that's on Thursday. Most people are now expecting the BOK to freeze the interest rate, but the real interesting question is going to be if and when they will raise the interest rate. People, including myself, have been expecting it as early as August, but has the current distancing measures made any changes in how they think? For foreign statistics, Tuesday we have U.S. Consumer Price Index inflation figures coming out. Wednesday we have China quarterly growth figures coming out, and and Friday you have U.S. retail sales figures coming out. So those will give us a clearer picture on whether the global recovery will continue and whether inflation globally will get worse or better.
All right, Professor, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.